Thank you. My name is Mary Wandia. I work with Oxfam GB Pan-Africa program as the Gender Justice and Governance Lead. So the Pan-Africa program mainly focuses on Pan-Africa institutions like the African Union. So I work a lot on the implementation of the African Union Women's Protocol, which is a very strong instrument. It goes beyond the Beijing Platform for Action and CEDAW. So it's very good in terms of its provisions, but it's been a very big challenge to have it implemented. In terms of MDGs, just to start by noting that although the Millennium Declaration notes that the MDGs simply build on the conferences and summits of the 90s by trying to sum up, kind of move objectives and actions in some critical areas. In essence, I think for women in Africa, and I think women globally, we say that it is minimalist in terms of women's rights, because we find that it does not focus on very critical issues such as violence against women. The declaration, however, goes ahead to note that achieving gender equality and women's empowerment is a goal in itself, but they also appreciate that empowering women is an effective way of achieving the other goals. But that link has only been made in theory, that is just at the policy level, because when it comes to the practical level, we do not see that appreciation, we don't see that link being made. And so overall, we would say that any progress in terms of achieving the MDGs has been inadequate. It has been very unbalanced, because if you even look across the three MDGs that we are talking about, you find that it is very unbalanced. And at the same time, also, if you look in Africa, even in terms of regions, it is very diverse, because you find, like I will point out, that there are some advances in some countries and in some areas, but then at the end of the day, it is very insignificant, and I'm going to point out some of the reasons why it is so. If you look at MDG 3 on women's empowerment and gender equality, the MDGs focus on I think three things: the elimination of gender disparity in primary and secondary education, and where they had set the target of gender parity in primary education by 2005, which they did not meet. And then they also seek gender parity in all levels of education by 2015. So you wonder how that will be met if they couldn't even meet the first target. And then it focuses on women's share of wage employment and political participation. Already we know in terms of employment, which is very critical in ending poverty, we know that most African women are in very vulnerable forms of employment. And although we are told that most of the lack of progress is due to the financial crisis, I think most studies, even by IV.MOD, Social Watch, already say even before the crisis, we were not doing well. So it's not an excuse. I think it just made it worse, because if they are in vulnerable and precarious employment, then of course they were the first to be laid off. So this was just this is just a continuation of the marginalization. And as many women have struggled with African women, there is still no recognition of unpaid work. And now this unpaid work has increased in the context of HIV and AIDS. And so it means that in terms of employment, then there is nothing much to talk about. And actually, if you go ahead and try to link this with poverty, you find that 80% of women are in agricultural production with very little involvement in manufacturing, yet we know that also their land rights are precarious, So even when you look at the sectors where they are concentrated, if you look at what is the control and access, then you still find they're still marginalized. Political participation is one area where in Africa there has been celebration that we are advancing because we have a female president. We have 56.3% of women in parliament in Rwanda, and several countries have achieved the 30%. But as I said, this is inadequate progress because what we have seen increasingly is that there are policies that women should get engaged in politics and decision making, but these policies are not implemented. Even in countries where we know that the laws are very clear, like in Uganda, but we are not seeing the implementation. So even ignoring the countries where we don't have such policies like Kenya, even where the policies exist on political participation, quotas in decision making, when governments start naming ambassadors, permanent secretaries, ministers, you do not see any implementation. Because then people are trying to do the, balancing interest, and the first interest to be dropped is women. And the other indicator that the policies are not being implemented is that the Beijing Platform for Action set 30% as the minimum target. The African Union went ahead and set 50%. So we were hoping that that will ensure that in Africa we get the 50%. But then even with such a very progressive policy, we still find that we've not even achieved the Beijing 30%. And that's why I'm saying they're good policies, but implementation still remains a very big challenge. If you look at the MDG 5 on maternal mortality, you find that the focus of the MDGs is on reducing by 3/4 the maternal mortality rate, that is by 2015, and ensuring universal access to reproductive health by 2015. And they are hoping to do that by reducing the maternal mortality rate. And we already know, I think the reduction so far, is it between they are using 2000 data as the 2000, comparing 2000 and 2005. I think I saw that the 2005 was, is it 480 per 100,000 births or something globally, and the reduction has only come to 450. So it was just 30. Such an insignificant reduction. And when you narrow down to regions like Africa, of course, and Asia, then you find that almost all maternal mortality deaths are taking place in those countries. And I think for me, maternal mortality is a very good indicator of the North-South divide. Because when you look at maternal mortality, you find that even in the US, if you look at the maternal mortality rates amongst black women, they are 3 or 4 times higher than amongst white and Hispanic women. If you look at Aborigines in Australia, it is 5 times higher than in the general population. If you look at the UK, amongst deprived women, then they say it's 5-fold. So it is one area where the North-South divide is quite clear. And we are saying this in a context where even the data is not available, because that has also been a very big challenge, getting gender disaggregated data across all sectors. But this is even one of the worst. So if already with the paucity of data, this is the status, then you tend to wonder, if we were having data, what is the real situation? And I would say that giving birth safely has remained largely a privilege of the rich, which should not be the case. And to say that the main causes of high maternal mortality rates are preventable and treatable. So that is also what is most disappointing, that it is not things that cannot be prevented, and it is not things that cannot be treated. And so you still find that skilled birth attendants are still a challenge. Contraceptive access is still a big issue. And in Africa, where we want to hide behind religion and culture, we still cannot deal with adolescent sexuality. Even where we have failed to move in terms of policies, in Africa we have moved very fast. We are seeing all these bills on anti-homosexuality, we are seeing all these bills on dress codes, so we have moved very fast in the wrong direction. But when it comes to looking at core things of antenatal coverage, family planning, sexual and reproductive health and services, emergency obstetric care, there is no movement.